exactly.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
had said something about the little boys' room. When I was given a hard time about scheduling a meeting 3 minutes after the executive session.
I'm glad I didn't call this meeting to order yet. All right, so let's call this. Trying. All right, let's call this meeting to order at 4:01. We do have a quorum, and adoption of the agenda is. Does anyone want to? I second it. All in favor? Aye. And so you just say aye. Oh, okay. Okay. And then, so tonight we are electing chair and vice chair. You were the vice chair. Right?
I'm vice chair.
Okay. So usually the way this works is somebody is nominated and then, or multiple people, and then we have a discussion and then a vote. We usually do chair first and then vice chair. So if somebody would like to nominate somebody out of the four of us here, or you know, force somebody that didn't show up. Go ahead.
You know, since you only have 4 out of the 7, if you still want to make this decision today, you can go ahead and do it because you have a quorum, but I guess it's just something I would throw out there in terms of whether you want to have a full board to make the decision or not. I'm not sure why the others haven't. I thought Matthew, I got an email from him saying that, yeah, Matthew's, it looks like he's coming because he did email me asking for a packet. So maybe that kind of makes that point moot. You got 5 out of 7.
Sure, and I guess I don't know of anyone in particular that has a dying interest, but if that was the case and they weren't here, then I would totally agree with what you're saying. Okay, so hi, how are you? We're in process of nominating a chair.
And we have a motion for you, so it's good timing on your part.
So would anyone like to make that motion, a motion of a chair?
I'd like to question whether you would like to continue in your position, both of you?
I am happy to continue, but I would like to see a younger person. We have 4 younger people here. It's a great place to start and learn the rules and how to be a leader. And so I'm thrilled if someone would like to be vice chair or chair.
I'm happy either way. I like being chair. I'll be here. At the same time, I have no problem having somebody else who is interested out of our group. I think we're all quite capable, so.
I'd like to make a motion that you continue to be chair. For the record, you want to put your microphone on so that she can pick you up on the recording. Got it.
I would like to put a motion forward that you continue as chair.
Is it a 1-year position? I think every year we do this? Yeah. Are you okay for another year?
Sure, I think this is my last year anyway, according to Scott.
All right, I second.
You can reapply.
I second the motion for Asa to be chair.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to make a motion
Comment?
or comment at this time? Okay, well, then we can take it to vote at this point. So if you are in favor of Asa Sarver being chair for another year, say aye.
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 Okay. Moving along, let's go on to what?
Don't I get to say no?
No, you can say no, it means nothing. Moving right along to vice chair. Would anyone like to make a motion for vice chair?
You know, I would love to nominate Matthew. I don't know if your schedule allows it, but I ran one meeting last year, one whole meeting for 1 hour. It was challenging. And then the last 10 minutes of one meeting when Asa had to go to the school board. It's a gentle ease into leadership and community development. And does that mean you're saying yes, you would consider it?
Yes, I consider.
Okay.
I'll second that motion. Is there anyone else that would like to make a motion before we vote? Okay, all in favor of nominating Matthew as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, I guess we'll just keep moving along. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So visitor communications, you don't have anyone? Okay. Approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2025.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have made it to presentation A, Northwest Parks Master Plan Update.
I'm just going to turn it over to introduce Matt Martin, our principal planner, who's been the project manager on this project. He's going to do a little intro for the discussion.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, for the record, Matthew Martin, Principal Planner, City of Sisters. We're back to provide you an update on the ongoing efforts to develop a master plan for Sisters' newest park, identified as Northwest Park. They're at the West Roundabout here in Sisters. We met with you in November to discuss a draft preferred concept that was developed over our public outreach efforts, as well as ongoing meetings with stakeholders and decision makers and advisory bodies, and provided a valuable discussion and feedback at that meeting that we continued to refine the plan, went to City Council at a joint meeting of City Council, Sisters Parks and Rec District Board in December, where we continued to present and get feedback on that draft preferred concept, but also introduced at that meeting was the concept of phasing the project and providing initial improvements to the site and potentially deferring other improvements to a later date, and then some initial numbers on the overall cost of construction and maintenance of the park were introduced at that meeting. So here's a chance to come back to you with some additional information on that phasing plan, initial costs, and get your feedback on what that phasing plan could look like as we continue to refine the project, as we work our way towards presenting the final master plan to City Council sometime later this winter, early spring. So with that, I wanted to introduce John Champlin, our consultant on the project with NV5, who's spearheading the efforts on our behalf. And so I'll turn it over to John to continue the presentation. So John, take it away.
All right, thank you, Matt. Just want to make sure everyone can see my screen and can hear me okay.
Yep.
All right. Again, thank you, Matt, and board. It's nice to be with you again. It's really a pleasure for me to be involved in this project, and fun to see it coming to a nice conclusion. So, what will be discussed this evening is very much a continuation of what you've seen already. As Matt mentioned, just with some phasing and some cost estimating included. So this is the preferred concept that is a minor adaptation to what was presented to you in November. We have, since November, removed the sand volleyball pit. It was determined that it would be a little bit too much of a maintenance issue and potential magnet for the neighborhood pets. So it very much is in line with what you've seen so far. So just briefly want to review the improvements that are represented here, and feel free to interrupt with any questions along the way. So keynote B would be the pavilion. The size of that open air portion would be 16,000 square feet. It's enough space for a couple of large courts or a few smaller courts. Flanking one side would be a fully conditioned support and programming building, and that would include restrooms, the ticketing, maintenance, storage, that kind of thing. On the main plan, you're seeing the summer and shoulder programming, and then in the winter, it would be converted and be used as a seasonal ice rink. The size of that rink would be 120 by 90 feet. Moving outside of the pavilion, the vehicular circulation and parking would connect through from Canopy Way to Old Growth Way. We're currently proposing 31 parking spaces. The configuration of the parking is such that we're maintaining as many of the existing trees as possible. That was a big priority for the community. In addition, we're continuing to keep the Three Sisters bouldering zone. So again, that would be bouldering for all levels, including beginner and novice, all the way up to expert. On the other side of the main walkway that meanders through the site would be the Naturescape playground with the integrated fire lookout tower. We have determined that the fire lookout tower should be fully ADA accessible, and so it would not necessarily be very tall, but would be inspired by a fire watchtower. So the look and feel of the structure and the aesthetic of it would be reminiscent of a fire watchtower, but would be fully accessible for being ADA compliant. In addition, we have Keynote G, which is the interpretive nature walk. That would meander through the site here, keeping this kind of central zone and westerly zone relatively unimproved. Meandering through that existing grove of trees, the pines and junipers, and then along the east side, another nature interpretive nature walk. Lastly, up on the north end, we have a small patch of lawn, and that would be just a passive space for picnicking, throwing a frisbee, that sort of thing. Flanking that are a couple of picnic tables, which would help to would be a relatively active use with the adjacent food cart stations. Down adjacent to the bouldering and the Naturescape playground, we also show a couple of picnic tables, and then we have bike parking as well. We've got 16 bike parking stalls on the project. Quickly looking at the architecture, this would be the conceptual layout of the architecture. We've considered a few alternatives, but landed on this as the preferred. Once the project goes into design and engineering, full design, and past this master planning stage, this will be fully designed. But right now it's relatively conceptual. The large purple zone would be the 16,000 square foot pavilion, and then the support building, you would have the entrance on the right side, flanked by a concessions and ticketing booth, which would have windows both to the interior and to the exterior, and then a rentals for skates and any equipment that people might need for utilizing what what is actually happening in the pavilion at any given time, and that would have rental windows to the entrance space and to the pavilion itself. The central core would be a restroom. The interior of the pavilion would be supported by communal women's and men's restrooms and day use lockers, and a single unisex family restroom and changing room. We're also showing 3 individual unisex restrooms that would be supporting the park. So these would only be accessed through the exterior, while the communal restrooms would be accessed from the interior. On to the left side, this would be the mechanical and support space. And right now, this is coming in close to about 1,000 square feet total, but would be where any equipment, pumps, the refrigeration system for the ice rink, and storage would be located. And again, that would be fully designed at the next stage, but conceptual for now. So a big question that has come along the way is, what's this going to cost? So we've taken a look at this, and please keep in mind this is without the benefit of final design or engineering. It is based on conceptual. But when we look at the direct construction cost, that's going to be all of the the physical components. That is coming in at just over 6.6 million. That's the number at the top. And then indirect costs, that would include things like design for a consultant. It also includes an estimating contingency that we feel is important as things evolve and advance. That contingency kind of helps buffer any escalation. And then it also includes just general contractor costs like bonding and insurance and overhead. The total project cost is coming in just under 10 million, so right at 9.9. Another big question that has come up is potentially phasing the project. And so we've looked at a couple of options for phasing. This would be the first. We would, in this option, only do all of the improvements outside of the pavilion. So we would do no improvements associated with the pavilion, leave that space unimproved, with the exception of extending the interpretive nature walk to kind of help create that closed internal walking path as best we could, for people to do laps as their kids might be using the playground or their bouldering zone. Outside of the pavilion, it would just include everything else. One thing to note, the pavilion itself includes the restrooms. And so in this option, we're showing a small concrete pad with a wood cladding screening around the sides and the back for a permanent porta potty. Keeping in mind that would be a temporary solution so that funding could be developed for the pavilion, and would probably only want to propose that if it was a year or a few years. Otherwise, might be wise to include a flush restroom, something more permanent. Thinking about the costs for phase one, the direct costs are looking at just over 700,000, indirect costs 350. So all in, phase one estimate just under 1.1 million. Relatively achievable with the city's potential funding options for the project. Now, a second phasing alternative, we're calling this phase one hybrid. So this would be everything that we just reviewed in phase one, with the addition of a small restroom and storage facility and a single hard surface court. This would be uncovered, but could be a location where a seasonal temporary ice rink could be brought in and set up and supported. One thing that we did when we looked at this was we located the court and the restroom and the storage facility in the exact same footprint as where they would be located in the pavilion. And so, thinking about the architecture of that restroom and all the utilities that are brought into it, the water and the sewer, those could be expanded upon and built into the future pavilion. But if that second phase never ended up happening, it would, be a nice feature for the community. In addition, the court, while uncovered, would need to have drainage, could be enclosed inside of an enclosure, and just have a relatively gentle slope, enough for drainage, but nothing that would be noticeable once it would be enclosed. So that surface could be maintained. And then thinking about the costs for this phase one hybrid approach, this would come in, the direct costs would be roughly 1.3 million, indirect costs 6.5. So total estimate for this 1.9 to 2 million for the total cost estimate for this phase one hybrid. With that, that is what I have for this evening. So I guess, bounce it back to you, Matt, if I might have missed anything, or open it up for questions.
Yeah, I just think one question of clarification for the group and myself is the difference between the size of the sheets of ice for the pavilion versus the temporary setup.
Great question. So in the pavilion itself, it would be 120 by 90. In this phased alternative, it would be 90 by 50. So it could be, it could be smaller, but 90 by 50 is roughly the size of the sheet of ice that they have at Sun River. So for reference, that would be a good one if you've visited there. We have also talked about the need of probably bringing in a large tent for that temporary ice rink, just to keep the sun off of it, help with snow, big snow events, keeping that off of the ice. So that would be something to consider. And, talking with city staff, we've looked into the costs of, bringing in a rented ice rink, or, potentially considering purchasing the equipment for a temporary ice rink, and then the city reuses that year after year. So that's something we're going to be exploring and looking at.
Thank you for that, John. Yeah, so I think our goal was initially to provide an update on kind of progress and these new updates on phasing options and the cost analysis. So looking for any questions that you do have, comments. You've had a couple of months to chew on the initial preferred concept. Anything you've maybe had some brainstorms since then, or response to the phasing plans, or things to continue to think about as design is refined. If you have some pros, cons, concerns, support. Yeah, so I'll just open it up to the group.
So is it appropriate to talk about these things now?
Yeah. Questions?
Questions? Well, I'm coming in a little later than you all, but I do a lot of space planning, and I've done a lot of streetscaping work in my past design work, and some of the studies we've done indicate that you may want to have a building that's fixed be sort of a launch pad for activities that tie the rest of the spaces together. And I'm questioning the location of element C because I think it's a barrier between the two activities, or it looks like it in plan view anyway. And the other aspect of that is that I would like to consider what you all think about the placement of the building in the landscape, and is there a possibility of using it as a screening device from road noise? And we've got that diagonal up there in the corner, and it seems like maybe the building could be up there, other than quick access to restrooms for people coming from the parking lot. Anyway, that's my wild ass statement.
Well,
I think
yeah.
It may be helpful to know that the area that's in the lighter color behind the existing structure that you see, that's not part of the park.
I realize that
Yeah.
the diagonal part there, I think that element C could be placed on that property line.
Does C go to F or C
C go to the northwest of where it's located now.
Okay.
You know, like between, just where all the trees are along the backside there. I mean,
Yeah.
you've all done all this studying, I'm sure, so.
No, I'm glad that you bring it up, or again, continue to refine it. That was raised in previous conversations on that kind of, that barrier, that continuity of the pavilion and its relationship to the outdoor improvements. Other designs have been considered with those facilities that are in Keynote C on the west and the north side of the building, and with more of an open air, provide that continuity. So that's certainly, I think, an option to continue to consider. But I don't know, John, if you want to, I don't think it's been abandoned as an idea.
Yeah.
But certainly something that's been discussed and raised as a overall design and flow of the park itself. So, John, any other comments there?
No, that was good, Matt. I would just add, we definitely looked at that. That was a concern, a consideration. We ultimately landed on keeping it with this layout, to keep the support building contiguous, and also allowing access to both the pavilion use and the park use. Noting that once the project moves forward past this master planning stage, I think the pavilion itself could definitely benefit from a deep dive into programming, laying out the specific uses, and really vetting all of the options. We do have an architect on our team who provided the conceptual plans and alternatives, but it was a relatively small piece of our scope of work, and so yeah, absolutely, it's something that could be developed further and considered.
Yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're at the master plan stage, so what is ultimately built may not look exactly like this once it comes. Great points to raise. Thank you.
I have a question, Matt. John, can you maybe explain what went into the thought of, on phase one, doing the playground area versus focusing on the pavilion area as a phase one and then the playground later?
That's a good point. Really, the pavilion itself is I'm just going to show the cost estimate breakdown for the full build out. The pavilion itself is by far the largest piece of the project in terms of cost. And so when we thought about phasing, it was, how can we provide a benefit to the community quickly and efficiently, and then think about also, if we were to build the pavilion, we would absolutely have to have the parking lot as well. And so, this doesn't show the itemized estimate, but the parking is a fairly large piece of the site improvements, as well as the utilities. And so, when it came to the bouldering and the Naturescape playground, they were relatively small line items in the overall cost estimate. And so that was pretty much what drove that decision for phasing.
I guess what I meant on the other slide where you just showed the smaller pavilion, can you go to that? Right there, yeah. So what I'm thinking is right there on that slide, why do you feel like the playground's going to serve the community and more people versus the open air pavilion with the basketball hoops and the restroom there? Is that the thinking?
It's a great question. We could probably go either way on that, in terms of doing a needs assessment. I know that a Naturescape playground was very high on the survey results. It was one of the top things on the list that the community wanted, and I think that also plays into it. When we initially looked at design alternatives that showed many different things, we showed a Naturescape playground in all options, and that was also pretty well received. We could certainly look at a needs assessment of a court compared to the playground, but both are relatively small line items. I do want to clarify, this option would not have a permanent pavilion. This would be an open paved court, so an open air, no structure on this.
Other than the bathrooms.
Correct. Yes.
Would that, may I?
Yeah.
Would that include the refrigeration, or are we just talking of a concrete slab at this point?
It would not include refrigeration. It would be a slab. We do have so basically we would have a small restroom area and then a larger storage facility, and that storage facility could help support the seasonal ice rink. But in addition, the size of rink that we're talking about would likely need to have a mobile refrigeration system brought in on a truck. So the design is such that we have some bollards along the roadway that are removable. We could remove some of those bollards, back the trailer back adjacent to the storage facility. So a mobile refrigeration unit could be on a trailer between the storage and the ice rink itself, and be left there temporarily while the ice rink is in play. So that's the goal. The refrigeration system would be on the trailer, and the tubing would be laid down, and then water brought in and frozen.
But that cost is not part of the $1.9 million listed for this, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And do you have an idea, is that another million? Is it seasonally adjusted?
So we do have some numbers for that. We have a ballpark estimate. It's quite high to have someone come in and provide the system, set it up, maintain it, and then take it down and take it away. I believe we were looking at around $250,000 for the season to do that each year. One thing we have discussed with staff is, what would it cost to actually purchase the temporary system, and then the city sets it up, maintains it, and takes it down. So we're exploring that right now. I don't have those numbers available, but it's something we're going to be looking at.
So just to clarify, between phase 1 and phase 2, or phase hybrid phase 1, there's no water in phase 1. There's no bathroom in phase 1.
Right.
So it feels like phase 1 should just be the bathroom, so that there's bathrooms there before a court. I just feel like $1 million for one court seems like a big stretch. So I would be curious where you would land with at least getting the water there and a bathroom.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And
Is
one
it
that
$?
It's $300,000 for what we just built over there.
That's $600,000 less than.
I thought with the court and the court and the bathroom is about 500 on his hybrid, or 600. But yeah, I bet half of that's the bathroom.
Still a lot of money for a court.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
That was where my thought was, is you pull the and then I don't know what it would mean to have that slab there, because if you went to phase 2, would you have to start over, or could you use that pre-existing slab? Because if you're having pipes run through it, it's not covering the whole size of the initial plan. So I'm guessing that's a pull out and start over with that slab.
it could be enclosed and repurposed. Just to clarify, the paving of that court came in right around 100,000 to pave that 50 by 90 foot court itself. So the restroom and storage facility and the utilities associated with that were a little less than $500,000 is what we were looking at for that. And so the court, while it's uncovered, before a pavilion is put in place, it has to have a slope to it. It has to have drainage, which not necessarily needed when it's covered, to the extent that we're looking at for the larger pavilion. Not to say it could not be enclosed. It absolutely could be. And if we wanted to repurpose it, it would require that temporary tubing and refrigeration to be laid down. If we wanted that embedded inside of the pavement, then it would have to be torn up or saw cut and add that tubing into it.
And I think a question to pose to the group is your concept of, are you supporting having the bathroom facility as part of phase 1 instead of just as part of this hybrid approach, but instead add the restroom as part of phase 1?
Yeah, I mean, that was my thought. I'm also curious. We have phase 1 and phase 1 hybrid. How many phases are we going?
Well, the hybrid approach is that you're putting in improvements in the interim until you come in with phase 2 in the formal and final constructed pavilion. So utilizing that space, getting some improvements, and kind of with this notion that of moving forward with the possibility of a temporary ice rink as that temporary solution. I'll call it a demonstration to see if there's the demand, the interest in moving forward with the final built environment. So utilizing that space with some improvements, but setting the stage for that second phase if needed. Included with this hybrid approach is the extension of those utilities, an improvement of the restroom, which would be incorporated into that phase 2. So I recognize that we're getting into various phases, and now we're getting into hybrids or 1B, one's
right.
And
just
then,
curious.
Are they different? No, it's a great question. So yeah, I'm curious if there's value in really just looking towards the permanent bathroom facility as the initial phase.
So I'm going to go back in history. This property was part of the Forest Service land agreement. And so the city was able to buy this section for $1. So going for grants in the future, that is a very good gesture of goodwill. The city design and the basic plan plays into applying for grants. The state park grants have traditionally in the past been hit and miss. We applied for the city with the Park Advisory Board push along with council applied 3 or 4 times for the funding for Village Green play structure. We applied 3 or 4 times before we got the funds for the public bathrooms at Creekside Campground. In the meantime, P-Rock was a big deal. If you all know where P-Rock is at Cliff Clemens, before the bathrooms were put in there, the neighborhoods complained, the parents complained because P-Rock was a big deal. And City Council took, I believe it was $80,000 out of the general funds to pay for those prefab bathrooms that are like Village Green and Creekside Campground. I think history with P-Rock, the neighborhood, the food court being close by, that it would make sense to have the portable bathrooms with the goal of having fixed bathrooms in as soon as possible. And whether that's applying for grants and using matching funds from City Council if it's within their budget, you know, and showing the goodwill of the community and building this out is probably the best option for the community. I know there are bathrooms across the street in the Welcome Center, but that's a busy road, and if you have little kids that have to go, they've got to go. And I would hate for the lookout tower and the bouldering walls to become
Yeah.
P-Tower. Yeah. Yeah.
One more thing too, when you look at this, to keep in mind, is that that side of town is underserved with children-friendly park structures. You know, we've got a lot of families that live over by the school and on that side of town, and also in the affordable housing complexes and things like that. There's a lot of children, and while a couple of the developments have very, very tiny, they have bigger dog parks than they do children's playgrounds in them. That side of town is underserved, and so in looking at this kind of a concept of an outside structure for play, it'd be very hard for me to justify building the basketball court if we didn't build the children's structure, because of the nature of that side of town being underserved. Having said that, it's still on the wrong side of the street, but that's another issue on another day. That'll be the Sky Bridge.
And I just want to add to Nancy's, I mean, you're right on about that. I've dealt with a lot of parks, and I think the first value of that park is a place for people to go, the public. I mean, if there's no playground, if there's just benches or whatever, at least it's a place for them to go. And restrooms is like a core infrastructure that they need, if they're walking around or whatever. And then, so I think it should really be looked at as a core infrastructure for the restrooms to satisfy some people that are there, and then look at your playground. And maybe it's one of those playgrounds, and then phase 2 or later that comes. But I really think that needs to be in the plan. Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment after our SPRD joint meeting with council. I do appreciate the hybrid approach. I think it's a great kind of in between. I think that there's a lot, I think that one of the things that we came out of that joint meeting is that there's still a lot that needs to be determined with that ice skating rink, whether that's a needs assessment, conversations with SPRD, cost assessment, all that stuff. And as we all know, everything just continues to cost more. And so I think that that's a great approach. In regards to the bathroom storage facility, I mean, if we are 5 years out before even doing anything with an ice skating rink, you know, I'm wondering if something kind of like what we just built over at the park over here that actually has like a covered shelter, what might be better use than having a storage room that's going to be sitting empty for who knows how long. Because I do know that that's also one of the high need thing that came up in the parks master plan is covered area for gathering. So for what it's worth.
Okay.
And I would add one more thing. Having lived on Locust Street prior to the roundabout being constructed and the tennis courts being on the former school property, now the recreation center, community center, there were kids playing basketball on that in the summer almost every night, or, you know, just shooting hoops and stuff like that. It was an attraction, much more so than it was a tennis court. So I'm not speaking in favor of one or the other, but I do think there is a perceived need for some of our older youth to have a place to congregate and to do something like that, so.
And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, when what the thought went into the basketball court versus the playground, because I think, I mean, you've just got some new playgrounds over there at your place, and Clements Park has a playground, so does Village Green. So are we duplicating that, or, I mean, is there a real good basketball court now? I'm not sure if you have that over there now or not.
We resurfaced one that's back in the corner. It's not as visible as the pickleball courts, and it's not. It's good, but I think what you would have here would be a lot more attractive. People would see it. You'd have more walk-in, especially with the schools being right there. And I think one of the key things for this site when we did the reach out was that looking for that middle to high school connection point, and I think that would be one of the ways you could do it. So.
And I think on the playground aspect is that most of our younger population in this community now lives over in that part of town. You know, it's just the nature of the housing and the pricing of housing, and you know, my neighborhood is we have 1 or 2 children in it now, whereas when I first went in there were 10 or 12, and you can probably remember when there were a lot more, Nancy. And so it's a long ways from there over to Village Green from a parent perspective. They load them in the cars, they take them over, we see them over there all the time. So something that would kind of service that into town would be nice, but I think you have to look at all age groups, not just toddlers and first and second and fourth and fifth graders. You've got to look at the bouldering wall, which is an adult and a child attraction, and also some kind of a playing surface. You know, I think those are all very valid points that I've heard. And the one thing I didn't like in the first one was the sand can. You know, I'm not a big fan of the porta potty approach. It's a maintenance issue, it's a time issue, and you know, I'd rather see some kind of a structure and have the water run in anyway, because there's no water in that initial plan either. So you've got a very open place with a lot of sun in the summer, and I guess we can all go over to the food truck and grab a beverage, but you know, they probably would like that, but you know, there's no water in the park under that plan.
I want to reinforce that the bouldering features were emphasized as a multi-generational or age group feature, and that the bouldering and the playscape rated highly throughout our public involvement as the primary interest for this site location, along with the potential for ice skating.
Does anyone have more?
Yeah, just first a quick clarifying question. Between phase 1 and phase 1 hybrid, are those meant to be presented as like 2 different potential starting points, or I guess how would you describe their relationship there?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think that either one, I would say either or. You know, you could look at phase 1 and phase 1 hybrid as the initial development for the project. You could potentially do just phase 1, then come back in and build a restroom and a court, you know, a few years later, and then come back in and build a pavilion. Really what we were looking at was trying to give the city options that are tied to real costs so that, you know, decisions could be made about the future for the park.
Sure, thanks. And then I guess the follow-up, I don't think John can answer now. I think just something that I'm chewing on is like, it sounds like a lot of some of the costs of that like second part of the hybrid development are related to maintaining flexibility for potentially following on with this, you know, full-on all-season pavilion. But then like if we decide that there's not the money, not the demand, or for whatever reason we want something else, I guess I'm wondering what alternatives does this like maybe eliminate or lean us towards? If this is a satisfactory final product, like could it look a little different and either save money or be even more attractive? That's just kind of what I'm ruminating on now.
It's a great comment and something that we have discussed. So at the core of our effort, we're trying to determine the feasibility for the pavilion. And if it's ultimately determined by city council that this site is not the most conducive for a pavilion. And that is not in the cards for Northwest Park. We do have at least a kind of a launching pad to start from with some improvements, but the layout and the configuration of these certainly were driven by the pavilion and how it needs to be located. And so reconfiguration of these improvements is certainly something that could be done once the project moves into final design and engineering, if the city council decides to take that direction.
Remind me, John, too, if your question was a very good one, and that is that if there were not a pavilion, would there need to be as much parking dedicated as there is in this particular concept, which I think is really built around the idea of having folks going there and utilizing a facility as opposed to using a park?
The answer would be determined by the ice rink. So if a seasonal ice rink were to be located on an open court like this option, then I would say we do need the parking. If that's not the case, we would, I think, be able to dial back the parking. We would need to look at, the development code ordinance and determine, minimums and what we have to work with. But there is street parking available. Granted, that can be gobbled up pretty quickly by the future developments that are coming in, but certainly a parking quantity and assessment could be altered if the pavilion is not included.
Does staff know when this is going to council for a final decision?
Our next check-in with the city council is February 11th. Not for final decision, but that's when we'll begin to introduce discussion on funding opportunities, both in our existing structure and where grant opportunities may be available, and strategies on how to fund it and in what kind of timeline. So that's our next step, but not a final decision by council as of yet, but sometime later, probably early spring for a final decision.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions at this point? Just this was an update more than anything. Just wanted to see if anyone else had any questions before we.
I just have 2 comments.
Sure.
And it's from a community member perspective, period. Not prior council, not on this committee. I am concerned, like I think Gary brought up, the number of parking spaces. If this doesn't become something more like phase 2 or phase 3, whatever, I'm concerned that this will turn into a private park for that neighborhood with overflow parking for my 3rd or 4th car or my company that's there. I'm also concerned, and because of my longevity in town, we'll put it that way, the food cart. I think the city at some point needs to look at the garbage pickup for that little triangle in the corner, because that will become the de facto eating court for the food carts, and the city should not be rounding up garbage and paying for the garbage pickups to happen there. And as soon as the food trucks and takeaway open air grassy areas happened here in town, that was the first thing we noticed, that people were Sister's Mean Smokehouse and Lucky's Woodsman, all their garbage was overflowing on the sidewalks on the weekends because there was no other pickup for it. And they didn't go back into the building. So that's a big concern for me, especially on that very visible corridor on Barkley that we're trying to re-educate people to use. So just something for Jackson and staff to think of. Sorry.
Well, thank you for this discussion. I'll continue to keep you updated, but yeah, excellent input as we consider what should be included with each phase and the size. The presence of a plumbed restroom absolutely has come through as an important factor, as well as right sizing the parking with each phase, because if there's not that big draw of even the temporary ice skating, then we could, with a phase, kind of phase in the parking as well. So thank you for those valuable those are big takeaways for me, so thank you. John, any other final comments?
No, thank you very much, board. It's a pleasure just to be with you and to get your feedback. It's very valuable, as always. Thank you.
Thank you for your update. Thanks for your work, John and Matthew, very much. We can move. Yeah.
So just be on our kind of bi-monthly schedule again, given our workload. So March 4th would be the next meeting. Also wanted to kind of put an advance plug in for our Arbor Day celebrations. We started talking about that today as a staff and starting to plan for that. In the past, we've done it on city property or city right of way or sometimes city parks. We don't know yet, but what we typically do is start with the Urban Forestry Board and have them kind of brainstorm some places for planting this year. We usually invite the kids from the school to come in and do the saplings. It's cute. It's really cute. And we're hoping to repeat that this year. We just don't know where. But we also want to involve Parks Board. If you guys have some ideas about places that we could work, then let us know. And I think Jackson's going to be working with the Forestry Board simultaneously and kind of figure out a site. April 24th is the day we want to mark out the calendars. More information coming.
Thank you. I will say, my kids love Arbor Day. Jen?
So everything is going good at SPRD. As you've heard multiple times, we just had a joint meeting with City Council and our board, which was a fun evening. So thank you for the invite. It was great. The board really appreciated it. Our park is almost complete. The bathroom is pretty much done. We're just waiting for a little bit of making sure we figure out what keys work for what and make sure our locking systems work before we open it up to the public. But we're almost there with our restroom and looking forward to that component of it. And other than that, we are kind of in our winter programming right now, which really means summer planning if you'd never worked in recreation. So we are full swing there and trying to figure out ways to maximize use over at that facility, because I've worked in recreation for 25 plus years, and it's always one of those things that recreation centers are kind of slow until school's out. And so we have had a huge growth in our fitness classes, and we've had a lot of rentals going on. We now host the Rotary meeting, we host the Kiwanis meeting, we host Living Well with Dementia, and so Young Life, and we actually have a lot of usage over there, which we're really excited about. But we're always looking for new opportunities, because our goal is to have that be an active, vibrant community center. And I feel like we're on our way, but we definitely want to continue to see more activity going on over there. Get a little concerned with the parking lot now the pickleball is open, but we will figure it out. But other than that, we are everything's going good, and I'm welcome for any questions if there's any to be had.
Cool. Anyone have any questions? Great. Go ahead, Gary.
Nothing new from City Council. I think we are kind of have our up to our elbows and nose and over our head on the UGB stuff. So we haven't really had much related to any of this. I think there'll be a lot of interest in what's happened today when we have our meeting with the council. Thank you.
Okay, other business, open discussion. Does anyone have anything to add before we adjourn? Well, right, then we will adjourn right at 5 o'clock.
That's why you're the chair again.